is over here. Alright, let's use paint right now. So, what is XCOM? Let's break down the XCOM-based games into their very base forms, okay? So, essentially, XCOM is a game where there is a grid, right? There's like a bunch of grids. You have walls. Some walls are higher than other walls. Some walls are thinner than other walls, like half cover and full cover. And both sides will have stuff of this nature around here, right? Now, let's say we can break XCOM into its most fundamental forms. Yeah, I really dislike the music. The music definitely is terrible, so I won't disagree with that. I'm not going to try to disagree with any of this stuff. But, let's say you have two sides, O's and X's, okay? We have O's and X's, and they are fighting. And we can break this game into its very most fundamental parts. When you're behind this type of cover, you're allowed to shoot over it, but you have to be able to shoot at them. You have to be able to draw a line from the center of the X all the way up to the corner of the O. Likewise, if you're at the corner of the X and the O is over here, the O needs to be able to draw a line from its center all the way to the X, right? That is the fundamental aspect of this game. Now, the thing about this game is that the 3D modeling does not matter or anything like that. It's a game of numbers, and then you have a 65%. So you can roll a D100, and you basically try to get within the 65 range. Now, this game does not require the use of, like, XCOM can be a very simplistic game. It's a very simple board game with X's and O's, walls, big walls, little walls, and then skinned over with 3D models, and you have really nice 3D models, and that's what makes XCOM such an appealing game. It's very simple, it's very easy to understand, and it's a game that allows people to just get right into it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with simple games. Simple is good. Now, there's nothing wrong with complexity either now. Complexity, if it adds depth, can be good. So does Phoenix Point add depth? Well, with the free aim system, suddenly it's no longer just about drawing a line to the enemies. It's about how good that line is. You are now adding a cone. And not just any cone, it is a 3D cone. This cone will adjust to height. It will adjust to the plane and height. And that also makes targeting the head, arms, legs, and torso much more important. There's actual value out of hitting their arms over their head. If you can't kill their head, but their arms have less HP, like if you can't kill them completely, but you can destroy their arms, then that's worth it, more so than just shooting them in the head and failing to kill them completely. That's an interesting game design mechanic now. And now suddenly, this is a game where your objects actually matter. Like, for example, if I'm this person, here's my body, right? And I'm aiming at this guy all the way down here, right? And he's behind some cover. The shape of his cover actually matters. It's not just that. And that's fine. Now, it's very difficult to implement, and Phoenix Point implements it poorly. And there are a lot of adjustments they would need to make this a good system. But definitely this is a good system. Now, there are other issues that I have with the UI, such as this not displaying the percentage chance. So, for example, when this circle is over here, right? This shaded portion is behind that cover, so there is no chance of hitting there. And then this shaded portion over here is going to miss, so there's no chance of hitting over there. But you have the chance of hitting their body parts over here. I think the game could definitely use like an indicator saying, okay, you have a 25% chance of hitting your shots because 25% of this guy's body is in the circle. That is a huge drawback to Phoenix Point, and this is the type of information that really needs to be displayed to the player, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I mean, there's nothing wrong with making the player have a little bit of a skill check in assessing geometry. There's nothing wrong with that, but definitely I think this would make this a better game. But, among other things, there's meaning to how these shots land. If the shot misses completely in these spots, then it's just a bad shot. But if the shot lands over here and possibly destroys the cover with environmental damage, that is still a shot that has meaning even though it doesn't achieve what you wanted. So now you not only just have like an XCOM where shots miss or hit. Now there is the effects on the environment with those shots. And that wasn't something you could control very well in XCOM. In XCOM, when you were taking a shot, the game would either just draw a straight line at their head, or it would draw a straight line like out into the middle of fucking nowhere. But there was like that little bit of implementation for cover destruction that XCOM 2 had, where it's like if you hit a vehicle behind them, it would like light the vehicle on fire. Now, there are some issues with this game that I really cannot get around, and I can't defend them for this. For example, if I'm hiding behind a wall like this, XCOM does a good job of saying, alright, well, the line would be drawn from here to the enemies. It wouldn't just draw the line from the middle and say, oh, you're blocked right here on this spot. That makes no sense, of course. Now, Phoenix Point has this issue where not all full cover spots are registered as full cover, and thus sometimes when you're free aiming, your guy's like, let me try to shoot this guy through the wall, and you're just like, what the fuck are you doing? You dumbass soldier! You're so brain dead! How do you not know to peek out the sides? And I think trying to code in an exception for every single piece of full cover so that they'll actually peek out is very difficult. There's no way to really reliably do that. And the easiest way to fix this would be a stance system, as Beagle says. A stance system where the guy would lean out over here with his gun, and that would actually be really good. Let's see what's going on in chat. I honestly feel disappointed with Phoenix Point as it has such great potential for a lot of death, more than Firaxis. I definitely agree with that. Like, this is a game which isn't just X's and O's skinned with 3D models. This is actually, like, a really interesting game where 3D models actually matter. Your 3D environment all is important now, and that is really cool. I really do agree with the fact that this game has a lot of potential, but because of how it is, but because of how it's just implemented, that there are a lot of flaws with the free aiming system. Now, here's my other gripe with this game. This isn't about the 3D system, but the modeling. There is a huge issue with this perk called Return Fire, which is supposed to dictate a lot of the battle. So they implemented Return Fire, I'm guessing, to give that feeling of action always being in the air. You're shooting back and forth at each other. It's an actual gunfight. But now here is the issue with this, okay? Let's say you have a bunch of enemies, okay? Let's say you have 5 enemies on the enemy team and you have 5 units. Let's assume everyone is an infantry-based unit and they all have return fire. Okay, so let's say you're the guys on the bottom side. One guy takes a shot, so you get 1 shot right now. Then every other enemy shoots back at you. So for this one action that the player has taken, so 1 player action, the enemy gets 5 actions. You take, and let's assume each shot is a 1-shot kill. Of course, that's not going to be the case, but let's assume that's a 1-shot kill. So this guy is dead now. Whether or not they kill you is a different story. Now you shoot at this guy. The remaining enemies shoot back at you. Okay, so let's say this guy didn't count for the first one, so let's do 4. I don't know who the hell designed this perk, but this is a terrible idea. The fact that it doesn't end on the first one. So now you have 4 shots going back at you, okay? Or, the first one was 4 shots because the guy died. The second shot was another kill, so 3 shots coming back at you. And now you have a second shot. And then, likewise, you take another shot to kill this guy, and now you have another 2 shots going back at you. Then you have this guy killing this guy, and you have another 1 shot going back at you. And then finally, you have this guy killing this guy, and you have no shots going back at you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have 5 shots in total here. And they have 4, 7, 9, 10 shots at you. They just doubled you in firepower because you took your turn. That is such a bad design. I cannot get over how this got into development. Like, this entire perk would be fine if they just made it one thing, okay? If they just made it so that enemies shot once. One enemy shooting, and that's it. And that's actually an interesting design if you do it that way, okay? If you do it that way, where each enemy only gets 1 return fire shot, that makes it so much better, because now what happens is you can shoot at one guy, but everything else will shoot back at you. And then that's it. Everyone else is free to take their action. But that leads to the idea of the heavy armor actually being useful. Right now, heavy armor is more of a drawback. I think the medium armor is the best armor because you're least likely to die and you get to tank some hits. Now, and then you also don't lose accuracy with the medium armor. With the heavy armor, you're losing accuracy, so the cannon is even more inaccurate than it needs to be. And we tried taking off the heavy suit on the cannon, dude, and it definitely did pay off. So, let's see, is Snarkbound saying something? Awesome, can't wait for your XCOM style game in 6 months. When are you starting? Someone's making an XCOM style game? Nani? Yeah, I think a stance system would just be really good for this game, though. But, in a lot of games, this is, like, kind of a gamer thing, having, like, roles assigned to each of your units. Having one guy assigned to tank, and having, like, a sniper in the back line be, like, the main carry. That is something, like, a lot of gamers like. You see this in MMOs, you see this in RPGs, you see this all the time in games. So, that little bit of depth, where one guy should tank all the damage, and then the other guys can fight back, that's really cool. That would make for a good design right there. Return fire just going off once. And it would be a lot less bullshit than just the enemy getting to double your amount of firepower from all 5 of your guys shooting. So definitely that is another huge drawback with the game. And another drawback with the game is because of how the free aim system works, or not the free aim system works, the cover system works, what ends up happening is half cover is better than full cover when dealing with return fire enemies. So let's say, once again, there's an enemy down here with a gun, okay? And your person is over here. This is your guy. Here is your full cover, okay? Now, when you take a shot, when you're in full cover, and you do get the lean out mechanic, and you're not just like trying to shoot them through the walls, as usual, what you do is your character steps out and shoots. Then if you fail to kill them, they shoot you while you're stepping out, so they're essentially getting a flank shot onto you while you're taking a shot on them, whether they're flanked or they're in cover or not. If they weren't in cover, then that was supposed to be your benefit for earning that flank shot. But regardless of what type of shot you manage to take, now they're shooting you as if you didn't have cover. That's stupid. But if you have half cover, though, okay, when they shoot back at you, you're going to stand up and shoot at them. When they shoot back at you, their circle is going to be like this. So the bottom half of the circle is basically shaded out because it's going to get hit to cover, and only the top half of the circle will actually get you. That actually gives you some cover benefit, but full cover gives you no cover benefit when shooting at return fire enemies, and it's just extremely silly that the player would be de-incentivized to use what would basically be naturally considered better cover. That's bad design. You don't want to punish the player for using a mechanic that's supposed to be good inherently. And now, the last gripe that I have with this game is the will mechanic and having no cooldown on your abilities. So let's say you're in a grid, right? This is a top-down view of the map now. Let's say I want to go over here and kill this guy. Let's say I can move only one tile. Instead of like moving one tile and taking like the bad shot, you can use dash, and then you can take 2 shots with your assault. And that's pretty cool. But you could also use dash, and then use dash again, then use dash again, and then point blank him twice with a shotgun. Or if there's another enemy, you can like shoot both of them with a shotgun and kill them both. That's a little bit silly now. And I thought about this long and hard about why this felt bad as a player, and I think the biggest issue with that is the fact that you use action points, okay? So there's this thing called suspension of disbelief in games, right? And XCOM has a good portion of this. For example, advent units when they're patrolling around the city center, when there is a wall over here with a window and the AI decides that the patrol pattern goes through here, they won't walk around it like a normal patrol would. They just smash through the window, and as a player that's really offsetting, because it's like, why the hell would any like buddy patrolling their own building just decide to smash through a window? And that kind of destroys your suspension of disbelief. So it's that level of stuff. So what am I getting at with here? Well, when you have things like action points, right? You have things like action points, and you kind of try to decide on how this would play out in your mind. You try to think of a story for this, and mostly the story for most people might be like, okay, let's say each action point took 2 seconds of real-world time, maybe. So to step forward was your first action point, that was 2 seconds. Step forward again, that's another 2 seconds. And then when you're over here, you try to shoot an enemy, you aim your gun and everything, that maybe takes 4 seconds. This is all just an estimate, of course. And that's believable. Now, when you have return fire, let's say there are 3 guys over here taking the 4 seconds time individually to shoot at your one guy. Okay, they're all shooting at your guy with the 4 seconds. They all have little cute guns, these MS Paint guns. There we go, MS Paint guns. And they're shooting at your guy for 4 seconds each. And your guy just suddenly decides, alright, let me go John Wick these guys. Pew, pew, pew! And he just goes, pew, 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 all within the course of, like, what should be an action that takes 12 seconds, or 3 action points. He does it all in like, or not 3 action points, 6 action points. He does this all in 1 enemy turn. And an enemy turn is supposed to be like each individual person should only get 8 seconds of action out of that. And he manages to pull that all off instantly. That's a little bit silly. Now, XCOM has this also. XCOM has this perk called In the Zone with your snipers, or it has Reaper with your sword people, where your sword people have a sword and they run around killing everything. So there's like a bunch of enemies over here. And in let's say the action points for the 2 action point system is also 8 seconds. But instead of 8 seconds, this guy just runs up to this guy, kills him, runs up to this guy, kills him, and runs up to this guy and kills him in the middle of a gunfight. It's kind of hard to believe that's a thing, but you kind of let that slide because he's like a main character in this game. So generally my rule of thumb for suspension of disbelief is how much of a main character, in these types of games, is how much of a main character would we imagine this guy to be. Would he be like the nobody in Attack on Titan who dies on the first episode as a rookie? Or would he be like the Master Sergeant XCOM soldier who's like a battle-hardened veteran? He won't die. He has a shotgun. He just like kills 5 aliens with it. That's pretty cool and all. But now you have the leveling system in Phoenix Point, where you have the assault over here, learning how to do return fire at perk level 3. This guy's like the equivalent of like a sergeant in XCOM. He's like the disposable character. He hasn't been set as the main character in the show yet. He could just be some random fucko that just dies on the 2nd episode, and we don't know. But he's going around going John Wick like pew 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 pew, fuck you all. And then every single other basic enemy that has a machine gun in the game is also the main character of the anime, of the isekai universe that they're from, where they just go pew 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 pew. So I started shooting. Pew pew. And it's like a little bit like, why do they have infinity actions with return fire? And I think this one perk definitely is one of the biggest offenders in the entire perk systems of this entire game. And I think removal of this perk, or just toning it down so that they only get 1 shot back, automatically just makes the entire game so much better. Which raises me to my other point about will-based abilities. You have the Disciples of Anu guy, or maybe even a Siren. Well, let's go with the Siren because most people are familiar with the Siren. I'm a Siren right now. You guys like my Siren? Alright, so here's my Siren, okay? Let's give you horns so you're like a snake lady. Alright, so this is a very good MS Paint snake lady, right? Now, I have all my guys over here. I'm like, I'm gonna fuck you up so hard, you're gonna die right now. Oh, you are so gonna die. And then the snake lady just comes in and she's like, nope, you're on my team, you're on my team, you're on my team. I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck? And this is also lends to the thing of suspension of disbelief in time, right? You try to imagine this in real time, and you imagine like the siren going whoosh, 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 which should not really give you that much action. Similarly, you have things like the dash ability, like we talked about earlier. You have this guy from across the entire map, and he just goes right up to the enemy and just like guns them down instantly with all his actions still intact, and then runs all the way back. You cannot believe that. That is just not believable. And the fact that I can, like, as a human, exert all my will to run a marathon in like half a second is just insane, an insane idea, right? And one really easy way to fix this, like this is 2 problems: the player's immersion, their belief in that, like, how this would pan out in their minds, as well as game design. All you have to do is make it so that there's a cooldown on this perk, on this dashing perk that you have. Just put like a 2-turn cooldown on it, and suddenly it makes sense. It's like you're sprinting and you're using up more of your strength to sprint there as fast as you can, but you can't keep doing that because there's a limit to how much a human can sprint. Similarly, there is a limit to how much the snakes can like try to exert mental control. Maybe they want to design mind control differently. I haven't really had that many issues with the skill. Like, it's a threatening enemy for sure, but it's not like something that's like completely broken. Unlike this fucking dash ability where I get to just run across the map, shotgun down 5 enemies because I have rapid clearance, and then run back to safety. That is just, what is going on with this? But these are all the design flaws of the game that definitely hurt the game's likability a lot, and there's a lot of game critics out there that are just like shitting on this game. Although I think there are some game critics that aren't shitting on this game for the right reasons. For example, saying that the free aim mechanic just doesn't work. I don't believe that is true. I think that level of complexity is fine for this game, but everything about how it was implemented, not everything, like, it was implemented fine. Like, I've maybe come across a problem once every 3 missions or something on like a small action, but like those little things will like detract from your gameplay experience as a player, and those are things that really need to be fixed. Like, if those things were fixed, like, this game just becomes so much better. The game design of removing that fucking return fire perk. This perk is literally Satan, okay? This perk is Satan, and it's killing the entire game. And as well as the no cooldown on the dash abilities. They need to implement cooldowns. They need to remove this perk and, like, rework it completely somehow. And that is my entire opinion on this game so far. Out of, like, I haven't even finished the game, so I don't even know what, like, all the really endgame stuff is like, but that is all of my gripes of this game. I really like every other part about this game. The strategic layer I like the idea of flying around, having multiple ships to manage. I definitely think it could have been easier to manage multiple ships. The way they force you to, like, click on each individual ships is a little bit weird. A little bit of UI updates would really help that, but that's all stuff that I'm used to. Like, it's not like the other XCOM games don't have their own issues, right? Like, everyone talks about the other XCOM games, like, hold on, let me go back. Peach. People go talk about the other XCOM games like they are gospel, like they're the best things ever. XCOM 2 was broken as fuck upon release, and it is still broken, okay? You're telling me I paid $60 for a game where if there's a truck here, okay? This was actually a problem with the release. They only fixed this in War of the Chosen, and I know this because I played 3,000 hours of this game. But if there's a car here, right? There's a car, and I decide, and there's an enemy up here trying to shoot at you, okay? And this car counts as cover. Let's say each of these spots are a cover spot, okay? If you're standing here, the cover acts as intended, but, and you will get the shot. So if he shoots at this person over here, it's 65%, 65% accurate shot minus however much the cover gives you. So in vanilla it gives you 40. So that would be a 25% shot. That makes sense. But for some reason, for some unknown reason, and the game devs definitely caught this, but were just too lazy to fix it because they weren't getting paid enough or something. If you shoot this way, you don't get the cover. You just get hit by the 65% shot. And a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people play XCOM and they're like, haha, I guess that's XCOM. I just got unlucky there. But no, there's actually broken cover in this game, and most people will never even know that they are getting scammed out of their ability to take cover as the player, because most people don't play with informational mods like, with things like what's called perfect information and stuff, where like the percentage to hit shows over the soldier's head after the shot gets taken at them. So a lot of people don't know this, and this is actually not just a problem restricted to the cars. It is actually a problem restricted to fence posts also in that game. In that game, there's a lot of fence posts, right? And those fence posts will sometimes be 4 wide cover tiles. If you're standing in the middle for some what is that? Alright, but if you're standing in the middle, enemies shoot at you as if you're flanked. And you shouldn't even be seen from that spot. That doesn't even make sense, right? You're standing in the middle of the fence. They shouldn't even be able to see you. And somehow they do see you. So that is another big issue with XCOM. But a lot of people talk about XCOM like it's like the perfect, flawless version of the XCOM game, which it is most definitely not. Phoenix Point has frustrating issues also, like the thing that I was talking about. If you're standing right over here and you're trying to shoot at a guy down here, you can't shoot at them sometimes because the guy doesn't lean out of his wall, so he just shoots at the wall, and it's extremely stupid. But it's not like this is the first time ever that this has been an issue. XCOM 2 had actually more issues than Phoenix Point. I have encountered so many more bugs in XCOM 2. In fact, and when XCOM 2 was first released, if you had smoke grenades on the map, it would crash your game. It was so bad. I don't know why people are giving XCOM 2 like that free run, and even XCOM 1 had some issues. For example, if this were a building and this is like a window or a door, right? And you have a soldier inside of here. If there's a floater, okay, let's draw a floater up here. He's behind this wall up here. Let's give him jet boosters down here. Okay, he's flying above this wall, right? He can shoot you through that wall, but for whatever reason, you can't shoot him through that wall. It's not like XCOM's line of sight system was perfect. There were definitely stupid moments where things just did not make sense in XCOM 1 also. And this obviously isn't the first issue either. There were issues with this game. So why are we letting XCOM get away with all this stuff, calling it the perfect masterpiece, calling it the better version of the game, when both games have issues? In fact, one of the versions of XCOM, XCOM 2, actually had more issues. And the only time it ever got fixed was actually when they charged you another $40 for an expansion that added 3 new classes, 3 new enemies, and a broken covert op system. That's all this added, okay? And they charge $40 for this. And this as a package probably should have been only worth $20. And then probably the rest of the $20 was to fix your game. I did not agree with that business practice at all. I do not agree with that. I cannot agree with that as a player. And the only reason I bought this game was because I got to play Long War. And Long War made this game worth like $200 to me. I have like, if you guys want to look at my Steam profile actually, I've gotten so many hours of the Long War mod, and just because of that mod, here, let me show you guys. XCOM 2, I've played 3,308 hours of it, and XCOM 1, I've played 3,019 hours of it. I've got so much playtime out of those games just because of the Long War mods. By themselves, the games were probably going to give me only like a couple hundred hours of gameplay, which is still pretty good for a casual gamer, as well as for a standard AAA title. But the way that these games were released, they are definitely not just something that is just a better Phoenix Point or anything like that. That is definitely not the case. I don't agree with that belief at all. But let us continue with our campaign. We've spent like a good couple minutes talking on MS Paint about my beliefs on Phoenix Point. And you know what? I think it would be pretty cool if I highlighted that and put that on YouTube or something and gave my opinion on everything. 3 new heroes, 3 enemy heroes, like 2 or 3 enemy types. I definitely think this game's way better than Vanilla XCOM, and one of the biggest reasons is because Vanilla XCOM charges you, like, let's talk about XCOM 2. Vanilla XCOM 2 charges you $60 for a broken game. This game charges you $40 for a broken game. Way better deal! At least I think it was $40. Let me just check to be sure. I'm not pulling things out of my ass. Phoenix Point cost. Phoenix Point costs by phoenixpoint.com. By now, it costs, it's like $40, unless you want to buy like extra stuff with it, like DLCs and stuff, but the base game is $40. That is a much more fair deal, I think, compared to XCOM 2 for sure. Okay, so there's different levels to get XCOM gameplay depending on, and I'm not saying this as an elitist, you filthy casuals playing it the wrong way. It's like, no, people play it differently, right? So in the original XCOM, there is, or not the original, but the Firaxis XCOM, there are 4 difficulty levels. Essentially, it's like, what was it? Easy, normal, class, commander, and impossible. We're gonna label these 1, 2, 3, 4. Where 4 is the highest level of thinking that you have to go into. Okay. Now, let's see what a level 1 person would do. A level 1 person has literally no clue what they're doing. They're just running their soldier forward and just taking like whatever the hell shots they have on like the enemies behind cover. So if like this is like a 20% shot, they're just gonna take the 20% shot. And there are even mechanics in place in the lowest difficulty where it's like if you miss shots, you get 10% added to your shot repeatedly. And if you get hit by the enemies, each time you get hit by the enemies, your enemy's chances of hitting you, let's say if 65% chance that the enemies had to hit you, every single time they hit you, it would subtract by 10% more and more. And there's also just like flat 20% aim bonuses for XCOM in this difficulty. So this is for players who have literally no clue what they're doing and they're learning the game for the first time. Now we move on to the next difficulty level, which is difficulty level 2. And I guess we could say this is around 2 and 3. This is where most casual players will fall. Most people aren't going to think too hard about a game called XCOM because they've got work, they're students, they have to study, and they have a limited amount of time in the day to actually play these games. So they don't really think too hard about everything. But essentially what they do when they play is they get the idea of what's good and what's bad. So if we have the top-down view of the map, right? And let's say these are cover slots. They know my soldier back here, and there's enemies up here. They know my soldiers should move up into cover and shoot. And if I get the possibility, I need to move up here and shoot. So that is like about this level of gameplay. And that is over here and here are where most players will fall into. Now, over here is where you start to get an understanding that enemies will also be out in the back over there, and they will activate if you move too far up. So these people kind of understand that you need to like not just run all the way in, but they sometimes break that rule and stuff. Then you get to the highest level of play, which is understanding that the combat happens before it begins. So, At the highest level of play, this is where things actually get interesting in XCOM. This is why I'm able to invest 6,000 hours into this game. Let's say there are little slots of half cover over here. Hold on, let's think of this way actually. Let's there's a big no man's land over here in the middle where there's no cover at all. There's a couple of half cover slots over here, a couple of half cover slots over here, and then there's like big full cover slots back here, okay? Now the enemies start off over here. Now, as a high difficulty level player, you realize that getting shot at is almost always a bad thing, because percentages are a thing. Getting hit by 5% is a very real possibility, that people in the lower levels will just say, oh, that's bullshit, I missed my 90%, and they hit their 10%. When in actuality, over the course of thousands of shots being taken over the course of a campaign, that possibility is not unlikely at all. And this is where players like Beaglerush, Arvius, Jorbs, me are at. Like basically streamers who play this game full time, or people who invest a lot of time into this game. There's even a guy who spent like 12,000 hours in XCOM 1 Long War. But aside from that, you would know the level 3 players and level 2 players will move up into cover that they can find available and shoot. That's what they would do. And they would end up losing this fight against higher level AI that don't give you aim bonuses for missing shots, and then what would end up happening is the AI would get full cover, you'd be in the shitty half cover, and then you'd be in a losing fight. The percentages are on the AI side. There's less chances to flank because the AI is entrenched behind like a full cover slot, and you'd have to cross this no man's land just to get up to these guys. But the better players will realize, okay, I need to sit here in Overwatch camp for a little bit, wait for them to patrol inwards. When the AI is up to here, they will activate on us, then they'll take cover in the half cover, and then we get the full cover, and that is on our side. And not only that, we don't have to cross this no man's land of no cover to reach the flanks. We can just blue move up to the flanks and just shoot them down. It's extremely effective. They're within range to throw grenades at. There's so many ways to take care of them, and this is the crux of higher level grid-based tactical gameplay, knowing that the battle happens before the engagement even begins. So there's a lot of players out there who will call something like the Siren OP, because the moment it walks up to you, it mind controls 3 of your guys. But you see, that's the issue here. Most people don't understand that the moment the Siren gets within range, the Snake Ladies get within range of your guys to mind control 3 of your guys, that means you've already made that mistake. You didn't space properly. Or the moment an enemy just walks up and throws a grenade at you, that means you weren't spacing properly, and you need to... In Phoenix Point, it's all about the spacing compared to XCOM, which was all about which side had the better cover, because XCOM was a numbers game about covers and stuff. While this game is all about, like, the actual line of sight and stuff. So your distance to the enemies is very, very important. So when you are dealing with threats like these, and it's not like I haven't been punished by threats like these, but I've, for the most part, figured out good ways of dealing with them. And the important thing is to make sure you maintain your distance, so when they walk forward, they're double moving, and they cannot take any actions, or in the Siren's case, maybe it can only mind control one guy with one's actions, and then the rest of your guys can retaliate and focus fire on it before it gets off in action. And that's exactly how you would play Long War Beyond Impossible, and Long War 2 and Long War 1. Well, not Long War 2. Long War 2, you kind of just ran into the enemies and killed them with shinobis with swords. But that's besides the point. Basically, in Long War 1 and Long War 2, you would essentially hold back until you got the enemies into the position you wanted. That is the game. That little dance of back and forth, where I'm like walking back and forth behind a wall, checking to see if the enemies are there, that is the gameplay. So when Beagle says there's gonna be people who are going through like one-dimensional gameplay in Phoenix Point, where they're basically just walking up to the enemies and shooting them, and then losing, because obviously that anyone can do that. So in order to have a higher difficulty to weed out the lower level players, you need to have that distinction. And this is the distinction that these types of games will have, where you have to know more than to just move into good cover and take good shots. Anyone can move into good cover and take good shots. That's like the basics of this game, if anything. The higher level gameplay of this game is understanding how to manipulate the AI into doing what you want as the player. And that's what makes a good commander. Phoenix Point or of XCOM or of any of these types of games. In fact, there's a game out there, there's another grid-based tactics game out there called Fire Emblem that basically does exactly this. That's the entirety of the gameplay for Fire Emblem, because in Fire Emblem, almost everything is melee attacks. You only attack the tiles right next to you, like those tiles or that tile. So what the gameplay essentially revolves around in that game is the enemy danger zones. There's like this cone of squares that shows exactly, or not cone, this triangle of squares, that shows exactly how far the enemy can move and attack during that turn, and as the player, you need to manage your distances and try to approach those enemies while drawing them in one by one, and that was the gameplay for Fire Emblem, and I thought that was really cool. I've only played one Fire Emblem game in my life before, and that was the Three Houses, so I'm a filthy casual, but like, I could see the design behind that being a really good design, honestly. And that was really neat. Alright, back to Phoenix Point gameplay.